I'm so stoked to have you on here, dude. Linus, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we'll get right into this, man.
All right. Yeah, I'm Linus. I'm a Swedish person living in Spain. I have about 20 years of design background. I'm an uneducated designer. I
Love it.
left kind of high school and started in the agency world as a runner when I was 17. And ever since, just kind of built upon what I've learned and kind of stacked my way forward in life. And then
Yeah,
accidentally, I kind of ended up discovering, I'd say, the potential of artificial intelligence and everything that you can and cannot do with it about 3.5 years ago. And yeah, I'm here now. Like people online seems to, enjoy what I'm writing and what I'm sharing, and I'm just trying to educate. I'm
yeah,
trying to make sure that the kind of divide between the people that have entered this field already and kind of taking advantage and the people that are maybe falling a bit behind, that rift doesn't get too wide, because then I think it's going to be really
yeah,
tricky to kind of like close the gap.
yeah. Did you see that like early on? I remember talking about this. I talked at a conference last year, and I'd say 90% of the feedback was really, really good, but the 10% was so heavily against it, and it was still in such a unique beginning stage, and that was like a year and a half ago. So it's interesting to see now. Do you still feel your perspective or your objective there is needed because there is some
Yeah.
pushback?
I mean, I would say that almost that the pushback is a bit harder in some areas today, because I think the capabilities of the tooling have become so much better. So maybe before it was more of a fringe, and people were, trying to fit specific use cases in their workflow and trying to get that automated or kind of help them with that. And I think now we're seeing a broader kind of array of possibilities. So more and more people are then also on the other side of it saying like, hey, I like doing this stuff. Like, why are you taking that away from me? So I think it's a combination, but it's a tricky conversation to be had, because like we've had to change the way that we work multiple times before, but it was never up to automation. I think as white collar workers, it's hard. It's hard. If you're a factory worker, it's far easier for you to kind of relate. I have a lot of friends
Good
that
point.
work in industry, right? And they're just like, it's business. One day I'm standing at a line, the next day a robot is standing at that line, and I have to do something else. So I think we kind of have to adjust the way that we work, and where we put where we put our minds to work. Because by the end of the day, like if a machine can do something and do it better than me, why should I? Then I
Yeah.
could invent new work, right? I can invent stuff where I can be using my imagination to the broadest.
Have you found, this is something I've discovered lately, is the folks that seem to be a little bit more open to it, regardless of still feeling like having questions, are the ones that, like to your point, have a little bit of dollar signs in their eyes, or business minded creatives. I think get it first.
I
That's
think
how,
so, yeah.
you know?
I'm,
And
I have nothing against people that are making art for the sake of art. And look, like I
100%.
think that's
Yeah.
the way it should be. I mean, I'm doing things that has no monetary value at all. I'm spending way too much time on things that I'm like, I'm getting nothing back here except for me.
Yeah.
So I definitely think like you shouldn't mix these dimensions of vectors. But I think it gets tricky because like we're trying to polarize kind of every topic or every conversation that we're having, whereas the reality is that all the things lies more in the middle. That it's more gray. It's like, in many ways, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
from a professional standpoint, like yeah, the people that are business minded, maybe they're running agencies, or maybe they're like, they have salaries to pay and they're starting to see what's going on in the landscape. They are faster to adapt, or faster to kind of like understand it, like something is going on here. How do I fit in? And there's people getting it right, there's people getting it wrong. But I see that kind of avenue advancing faster than, let's say, the person that is a super talented, creative director that just want to build worlds or just want to be creative. That person might struggle a bit more to understand the benefits.
Yeah, yeah. Overall and in general, I think you've said this a few times, and I've talked to so many people about this idea of you ignore AI right now, you could be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about that theory and why you feel so strong on that.
I think if we were, it's really hard to go to history and say like this is exactly like history repeating. It's more like a rhyming kind of scenario. But I think if you look at the traveling painter that went around did portraits, right? Their livelihood depended on them sitting with their subject or object and during many sessions painting them. This was not like a 1 minute job or a 5 minute job, like multiple sessions over time. When the camera came around, these people had a hard time. But there was a subset of painters that adapted the camera, and what they did was quite ingenious, really. They went to someone and said, hey, I want to paint your portrait. And instead of painting the portrait over 20 sessions with this person, trying to, have the same lighting. And another thing happens over time. If you're trying to paint a portrait over 20 different sessions, and let's say it's over a course of a month and a half, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, light changes. So these people, they actually took the camera and they took a photo of their subject, and then they brought a photo with them, and that's how they made the portrait. So I think similarly now, when you're seeing like people that have a hard time adapting to the tools, they go like, I don't want to get replaced by, and they kind of get stuck in that kind of mindset. Whereas like, well, how can I find ways where these new tools, powerful as they might be, can help me become a better professional at what I'm doing? And I think when you have that mind shift and go from like, I'm not just going to sit around and wait for someone to come and steal stuff from me. I'm just going to try to see what's possible. Then everyone has their own discovery. And I've seen this over the past 2.5 or 3 years almost now, where like people that I spoke to prior go like, oh, I will never touch this. And then they have like a moment, an epiphany or something, and they go, now I'm using it every day. And I'm like, hey, there you go. Wasn't that hard, was it?
Yeah.
But everyone has their own thing, right? And it's not true. Like I'm generalizing here that like 100% of people will like this. That's not true. But many people that have been vocally against it has since come around to say, hey, you know what? I should have taken your word on actually exploring this, because I figured out while it won't replace me at the drawing table, it allows me to move much faster with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I think this is the point. Like maybe you're a person that's like spending time at the drawing table, then do that. But maybe you're not happy doing admin work, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're a creative person, but you have more ideas than time to draw. So then maybe you need help to accelerate those ideas to be able to decide what to draw. So, and when I say draw, that can be, creating artwork.
Yeah,
it could also be like making a website. It's just a figure of speech. Yeah.
That's such a great way to put it, because I always think of desktop publishing when the Mac came and the whole industry changed from physical boards, actual creative artwork, pen to vellum, and now you had everything go digital. I remember seeing folks who did not want to join that bandwagon.
Yeah.
And it was, that was it. But this one seems, the speed of it just seems so quickly that like, you know what I mean? We're talking about one
that's
feature.
The difference. Like I had to change in my career. I guess we all had to change in our careers, but that change has been very slow and gradual.
Yeah.
And if a new software is coming out, I can just say in terms of like product development for like apps and software, for the longest of time, we used Illustrator or Photoshop to make these UI components or things for these websites and stuff, right? And now their Sketch came out, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And then,
good example.
People moved over, and it took like years to get people to move over. And then Figma came around and everyone was using Sketch, and they were like, oh, we'll never use something that's web-based. And now it's basically like, well, everyone is using Figma, and it's like, and Sketch is still around. But these are slow advancements that took long time to kind of permeate through the workforce. Now we're seeing like, there's so many tools every single week that is showing up that is doing all sorts of creative work, right?
Yeah.
And it's just really hard to tag along. Even for someone like me that drinks from the Kool-Aid every single day, I get fatigued. Like I don't even know, like the stuff that I used a month ago, is that still relevant, or has it, been completely flipped on its head?
Yeah, like are you keeping up with all your memberships?
Well, lucky for me, I'm in a good position where I've been able to try a lot of software
Good.
without having to like go deep into my pocket to figure that out. But like,
And I think anyone can too.
Yeah.
I dabble in so many, and so many are still free. and
Yeah.
so many are still in like a beta. So, good point.
I think actually also a lot of them are really hungry for user feedback. So like if you reach out to many of these teams and you go, hey, I want to try this
nice.
out and I want to provide, X amount of feedback hours, many of them are willingly going to give you like a pro tier for at least half a year for many of these tools, if you give something back. And I think that's also like showing how cutthroat the kind of industry is at this point, because everyone is fighting for the same amount of eyeballs. Um, uh, I would say though that one interesting thing with generative AI especially is that now we have a very limited amount of the population that's doing creative work. Let's say it's about 1.5 to 2% of the general population works within the creative industry. With the advent of these tools, that kind of that will grow, because all of a sudden people that couldn't put pen to paper will enter the field, and thus the eyeball kind of count also grows. But it's an interesting time to be kind of an old school person, because I mean, obviously, like I cannot relate to a 20-year-old something coming into the field today, comparing it to what I had access to when I was that age, basically.
They've never seen a revolution kind of hit the industry at all, let alone this one, which seems to be so crazy and big. And you're right, it's sometimes it's hard to keep up.
And it's over-encompassing, right? Even if this is also like, we're talking here within the context of being a creative and working in the creative industry, but these tools and other tools are obviously like impacting all other verticals at the same time. So it's not like an isolated event. It's not just the creative industry that's undergoing this kind of paradigm shift. It's, law, it's physics, it's biology, it's everything at once. Banking, like finance, all the jobs are kind of going through the same massive disruption in terms of like, how do we do work? How do we price work? And what do we spend our time on ultimately? I think it boils down to that. Like, where do you want to spend your time?
Yeah, all those variables are changing, right? Like, I notice in pricing, timing, you name it, all those different things that I'm starting to see how that is shifting because of the use of AI or what a potential new client might expect. They hear things are faster, cheaper, better. That triangle that all three could never exist, and now they almost think it can. So, like I'm a big fan of being so in the know, just for the experience of having the knowledge, even if it's not usage, is going to help you out as well. And I think to your point too, you said like how that could find its way into somebody's workflow or whatever it might be. All you need to do is see a great example of someone using it, or some new feature.
I think this is ultimately the hardest part for most, both people, but also the people that are building the tooling, to figure the use cases out, because it's so very individual. Yeah, you have all the low-hanging fruit, but then like as soon as you go away from that and you kind of enter, maybe you can grab 30% of the masses with that, but then you have to like, how do we get the rest of the 70%? Everything follows the same kind of adoption curve as what we've seen previously in tech in general. You have the kind of bell curve with, the early adopters, the early majority, and then kind of the middle stage, and then the late majority. And I think we're still very, very early, even though with like tools like ChatGPT, they have amassed a lot of usage, but like that's still just scratching the surface of what's possible with this tooling.
What's your thought when people talk about this all sounds like job loss? This sounds like less jobs. This sounds like I read an article yesterday that just blew my mind. It was talking about the demise of the junior level designer, that person. And as a teacher, I brought that up to my students and I brought it up to our faculty, because I was like, that sounds like missing opportunities, right? Like that job is no longer going to be there for me when I graduate. And then how do I become the 5-year seasoned creative that I need to be if that's the only thing hiring? So talk a little bit about this idea of like the fear of job loss, or is it about the relevancy and this evolution that you might want to kind of join the bandwagon on?
The way that I've spoken about this before, and I think my standpoint here is still the same, it's going to be a bit of both. It's going to be brutally, honestly, it's going to be brutally hard in some cases. And then in other cases, it's like we we're trying to fit the new world view onto the old paradigm, where like we had junior roles, mid-level roles, and senior roles. I'm a firm believer that with all these advancements in tools, but also the ability to learn and upskill relatively quickly, we are going to maybe lose the junior role, but that doesn't mean that the people coming out of schools are at all in that level anymore. They might come out of school being closer to a mid-level role.
Yeah.
So we're kind of raising the floor a little bit, which might sound terrible if you're
Scary.
worried about like the old paradigm still sticking. But if you then take into account that like maybe what we expected by a junior role, let's say 2 years ago, and the expectations that we have on someone coming into the same job today have changed so much, but it doesn't take away that the abilities of the kids or the students coming out, young adults, they might fit that new paradigm pretty well. And at the same time as we're like increasing the floor, or higher, like raising the floor, we're kind of removing the ceiling, because you have these seasoned professionals that maybe prior were able to churn out X amount of work, X amount of good work. And now because of the kind of advent of everything that's going on at the same time, they are now, let's say, twice as performant or twice as productive. And maybe they're using that productivity gain to make better work, or they're using it to make more work. And that's totally up to, the individual in question.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's like what we were trying to get from professionals, like the highest tier, like the ones with the most skin in the game, we are now going to get way more. So I think that way of looking at things, not trying to fit the new world order onto the old paradigm, but rather trying to reinvent, like what does the students that are finishing, like the people that come out of schooling, like how do they prepare for what we expect in the field today?
Yeah.
And then the hard part there is that there might not just be enough positions, right? So maybe you have the skills, but it will be harder to compete about getting the jobs. So that's the brutally honest part of it, but it doesn't mean that like all jobs are going to get lost to automation. And at least not from where I'm sitting now and from what I've seen in the last 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah. Designers, let's talk about one of the trickiest parts of any web project, and that's handing it off to the client. You've built this beautiful site, everything's aligned, balanced, polished, and then a few weeks later, they try to update something, and boom, the layout has gone rogue. We've all been there. That's where Wix Studio's real-time content management changes the game. With this feature, your clients can upload text, update text, swap images, add new content without ever touching the design. It gives them simple, intuitive editing tools that protect your layout while keeping their site fresh and current. It's perfect for the little things like menus, team bios, or blog posts, anything that needs regular updates. And the best part is you can manage all the permissions, so clients see only what they need. No accidental design disasters and no 2 a.m. help me fix this text. For you, it means less maintenance work. For them, it means total freedom to manage their site confidently. It's collaboration done right, real-time, secure, and beautifully safe for your design. Because when your clients succeed without breaking the site, you both win. So explore real-time content management at wixstudio.com. You bring up a good point that with all that, the positive was the ceiling has completely raised for more opportunity, more growth, more success, whatever you want to call it. The thing that I struggle with so much is there are going to be this maybe generation, maybe 5-year kind of gap, and I feel like it's happening right now, where school needs to catch up or education needs to catch up to get them ready for that. Because like I look at the current students and they don't have the blessing of a revised curriculum that's getting them ready for that. So my question would be, if you were entering your senior year of college or a self-taught, as yourself is right now, and wanting to get into this industry, what skills would you completely hone to make sure it's making up for that gap?
The ability to put yourself in that kind of lifelong learner type position, right? Where you don't shy away from even if you're tired, even if you spent the last 4 years or 3 years, completely going in one direction, uh, there's a lot of basics there that I think everyone will be happy that they have kind of acquired. But really just rewire your brain to be like, okay, actually, what if? Even just stepping out of your own role as a student at that point and being like, look, I can go on the internet, I can go on YouTube, I can go anywhere, and I can get the latest information free of charge, and it's like a fire hose to drink from, right? It's the burden is on you, and unfortunately, like you were saying, we are in a time now, like let's say it's a 5 year or something like this, where everyone is going to get squeezed, and unlucky for them, and it's the harsh truth, but they're going to have to like work probably twice as hard as the people that come after them. But this has happened in history before. They're not going to be alone. It's just that this time around, it doesn't matter if you're a design student or not. Like every student is in the same boat.
Yeah.
So I think trying to make the tools work for you, trying to be like, I'm just going to ingest, and I'm willing to put everything that I've just spent 3 or 4 years learning to the side to try to understand like what has happened since. I'd say many of the young people that I meet, they are so more far advanced than I were in that age in terms of everything. They're just like digitally native in a very different way. They've grown up with everything around them being digital first, whereas like I came up alongside the internet. I remember like the first time we had a dial-up at home. I remember putting
that
money
sound
in a
is
jar
still
to
embedded
pay
in
for
your
the
brain.
internet, internet hours. And I think that is the biggest difference. I think we're underestimating the younger generations and how adaptable they are in many senses, in many ways. Yeah.
I'm glad you're optimistic on that, really, because when you say it, one, I totally respect the honesty with that, because it's so true. You saying like, this is going to be work, like it won't be easy, you know, and I love that, but then it's kind of like, sometimes I see the generation is so embedded in digital and on demand everything that there is a sense of ease with life that this just sounds like one more extra hurdle to be like, oh, I just finished this. And now I've got, I got to, like you said, and I totally agree with you, bro. The whole idea of like rewiring. And I'm fine. I'm doing that right now at this stage in a career. And I said to someone yesterday, I'm like, I absolutely love how it's like a rebirth of creativity, and I'm seeing it all over again because I'm curious and I'm trying to stay up to date with all this stuff, but it's made things exciting again. It really has. And I try to kind of make sure they see that. To that kid though, or to that student or that self-taught person, are there traits outside of design you think are super important too? Like, call them the soft skills that will help you at least have a sign of like, there's someone to talk to, there's someone to maybe initiate with.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm trying to kind of like not put on others, but like if there's one thing, like stay curious, right? Like it's easy to say stay curious, and I think in more kind of practical terms is to like start turning rocks, start asking questions, start like the internet is very big and it can feel very daunting, and if you're kind of like stuck in your little bubble socially, that like your friends, right, like that's one part of the internet, but there's a much broader part of the internet where you can reach out to anyone. That's the beauty of the internet. Like if you find someone that you really kind of like, this person, I want to talk to them, there's plenty of ways to try to get their attention. And you don't have to go for the person on with millions of followers, so that you don't have to go there.
There's more value in that the level you're talking about.
I think there's plenty of value in just finding peers. Yeah. Just finding people. Maybe they haven't been in the industry for mega long, but they've been in the industry long enough to have valuable insights. And it's very easy to use the internet to your advantage these days. Because also, I don't see a lot of people doing it. So if like I have proper people, like if people are sliding into my DMs or like sending me emails or figuring out like my phone number, whatever, I'll give them time. You know, I'll answer their questions. And I know a lot of other people do the same. I think we kind of lost that part of the whole idea of the internet, you know, that it's like a place where you can actually do things, not just, you know, doom scroll.
Yeah, it has a different perception lately because of when you see that kind of idea of that. And YouTube can be that way too sometimes. I wish there was a way to get rid of shorts because that's where it kills me. Because like,
yeah, I mean,
honestly,
it doesn't matter how many times you kind of click
I
on them and
know.
say, show me less of this.
It doesn't
like,
work, man.
Gonna,
They don't want to lose that in you. But to like, you know, how I discovered you was your repeated posts. And I don't think I was even following you, and yet you were showing up because it matched a lot of the same interest on X. And so when I see that and see it done kind of with a refreshing take and you sharing so much good stuff, that's what made me want to reach out, because I was like, I have a feeling, and I'm correct with this, that you're going to know a lot of shit about this, and you're also bringing it in such a unique way, and I think that's the conversations that a lot of people need to hear more of, you know.
I also want to like caveat that I'm by no means like an AI professional, and if anyone says that, then I would say like that's maybe a little bit of like an ick. Like try to be careful. I would say that I'm extremely curious, and I'm trying to, you know, share. And I'm opinionated. That's another thing. Like I do have opinions, but I try to hold them relatively loose. But like I try to share like what I feel and what I think and what I discover through playing with these things. And sometimes I'm very wrong. So sometimes like it's my biases and like the way that I am that might protrude my opinions. But I'd say like I've had the fortune to in the last 3 years see probably 90% more than, or even 95% more than most people. And there are a few of us, like it's not just me, there are others, but I think we all share this sense of like, we need to try to get people educated on the subject, and then it's up to them to make their minds up. Now I feel there's, you know, people have opinions, but they have no idea what they have opinions about. They just go like, no, this is shit, because it's unethical, or it's not morally right. And I'm like, war is not ethical, it's not morally right, it happens all the time. Or, you know, there are other things in life that is not ethical or morally right. But you have a chance here to be part of the solution. If you have strong opinions about this, engage in the discourse. Make sure your voice is heard. Make sure that you understand how these systems work, so you can be active in trying to, you know, put your view out there, so that the decision makers and people with way more power than us mortals have a way to kind of say X, Y, or Z. Like, should this be legal or not? Like, we have legal frameworks for many things, especially in the creative industry. We have IP laws that has been around for a very long time. And it's naive to think that none of these things will come into place once this whole kind of thing simmers down. And we're already seeing lawsuits being, you know, big AI companies paying big money for breaching IP rights, right? So if you are in that, and that's where I see a lot of the kind of anti-establishment is kind of hovering in this area. It's great. We need to have these opinions, but that doesn't take away the fact that all of this stuff is already here. So you can kind of be, I don't want to say, this is really tricky because it's easy for me to sit and say these things, and I see their point of view. Like I agree with a lot of times I agree with everything that's being said as well. But you have to be able to hold that in your head and at the same time understand and follow the money that this is going to happen whether you like it or not. So the only
That's
way
the
that
line.
you can, yeah, but yes, so you have to engage. You cannot just close your fist and be angry at home or punch at your keyboard or tap on your phone. You have to engage. And I think we've seen, you know, some movements, especially in the creative industry, where, you know, people go, don't touch my art. You see Adobe, which is a great product, a great company, even though they're incumbents and they're not in the forefront of the AI field, but they've taken a stance where like, oh, our model is going to be ethically trained. They're going to be safe for use. And yes, they're not the best models. They're not producing the best work.
And that's exactly why. Yeah.
Exactly. But they're taking a stance at least. And then like, you can decide whether or not you like that or not. But I think we are seeing, because of voices being raised, we are seeing even big conglomerates like Adobe taking a stance and making business decisions based on this. And then we can argue whether or not Adobe should be around or not, or how big they should be, or if there's time for someone else to come in. But I think this is the nature of business, the nature of landscapes and the free market. So I just, people should just, educate themselves, because then it's way easier to have the debates and have the discourse. And I don't know, like, maybe because I'm Swedish, and our political system is not binary. Like, we have a very, it's very nuanced, and it had become more binary in the last decade, but we still have a very multi-party system. And it's like, whenever I walked into a room my entire life, like 7 out of 10 has disagreed with me, because like everyone like have the little fringes, like I'm for the environment, or no, I'm for schools, ground. Or like I've never had a problem with having people disagree with me, and I'm not hating on them.
It's new for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Who am I?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, why do you think we're in shambles? It's like no one knows how to debate, like, or not even. I shouldn't even say debate. Just have a conversation about opposing views.
You can disagree. That's perfectly fine. Like, if you cannot talk to people that you disagree with, then you have much bigger issues. I think the problem is that we always try to villainize. And I see that, I know we're not going to steer away from the topic here, but I think this is a little bit what's happening in the creative industry. Like, with the senior level in the creative industry, people that are like in the mid 40s, they've been around for a long time. They're comfy. They're making good salaries. And here comes this, change that's kind of ripping up their comfiness, because they maybe thought that I'm going to coast for the next 15 years and just enjoy that I've worked hard to get here. And at the other side of this is like, you have everyone coming out of university and they're like, where am I going to fit? Yeah. And if I don't go aggressively now, I'm not going to fit at all, am I? So you kind of have this kind of polar opposites almost, where like you have someone that's hungry coming into the industry, and you have someone that's a little bit of a fat cat sitting on the very tail end of things, and they are not incentivized in the same direction, basically.
Yeah. That's so interesting, dude. If I was still at the agency job and not self-employed, I'd probably be in that same boat. I'd be like, what is this? I was coasting just fine, right? And if it wasn't for running a business and being an educator, I probably would have a totally different opinion on this, to be honest with you. Like, that's interesting. Because, like, so to that person, let's say you are that person that's sitting pretty, or just trying to stay afloat, whatever it is, what would be your recommendations of bits and pieces of things that AI could immediately be practical in their day-to-day? And it doesn't. It could be on any platform, not even degenerative stuff.
I think almost the same as like with the students there. It's like, but I would say like if you're in a job, then you know all the repetitive work that you're doing. And I think if you're somewhat good at what you're doing, then you're trying, regardless of the tooling, to kind of, like, if you do something multiple times over and over, you're trying to figure out a way to automate that away, or to like do less of it. And if you're not already thinking about that, that's definitely ground zero. You should start there. And that you should have started that a long time ago. But actually, now that I think about it, a lot of the senior folks that I've been working with, they would spend an enormous amount of time as a part of the pie, right? Doing all the monkey work, because they took pleasure in doing it, or like they felt like, if I'm doing this, I'm doing work. Whereas I'm like, wow, you're doing this all the wrong way around. Like, why are you spending so much time on these tasks? Either delegate or automate. So I think now with the advent of AI, you can do a lot of that. Like, you can really set yourself up for success in your workflows, whether it's, admin work, communication work, whether it's like spec work, depending on like what type of role you might have, ideation, but also like summarizing and getting like input from stakeholders and like getting all that synthesized work that took a long time before. Basically now you can just use any of the chat tools to be like, here's a bunch of documents, summarize that for me, or here's a bunch of user research, pull out the key things, what's the takeaways from this. Like all of that is super low hanging fruit. And then if you're a creative and you're doing a lot of creative like work, use AI as like a creative sparring partner. Use any of the generative tools like Midjourney or others to kind of like just do the volume work that maybe was difficult before, but now because of AI, you can really rack up volume work, and you can train almost your taste sense or your ability to kind of like use word to better describe what it is that you're going to do, because that skill when working with others is going to be paramount. Like if you're not able to communicate well, then you're not going to be able to work well with others. And I think AI is really showing us that like context and communication is like two of the most important things that we're going to have to adapt to. Like how do we bring the right context and how do we communicate clearly? So it's a net win the way that I see it in that sense.
What has helped you the most in your day-to-day that's AI driven?
Voice, I'd say. Like actually, and this is something relatively new. I think the fact that I can just use my voice to do a lot of things, like my word count, like for writing, like it's decent. Like I can write pretty fast, but I can still be 5 times more faster with voice. Yeah. And even if I'm sloppy, like with voice, and I get things wrong grammatically because I'm not a native English speaker, I can, like the intermediate layer of like an AI taking the voice and turning that into text. There's also the ability for the AI to be my grammar fixer, yeah. Right? Oh. Or even make sense of things. So like I can just
don't even get me started on that.
I can just jap into anything and then just like it writes a perfectly formatted email, or I can reply to social media even actually replying so fast to social media comments that the system thinks I'm a bot. Because I can just speak, right? So I think that's the one thing now that I've had the biggest impact in terms of how I do daily work. But then apart from that, it's just that like putting things through an LLM in many senses, at least the synthesis stuff has been such a time saver, and also ultimately like doesn't miss things. Like sure, sometimes you have to go back check, and if it's really big projects, then you have to really like look twice, but like it's like having a really good like sparring partner that's not biased, that won't doesn't have like a personal target or goal that might compete with yours.
It doesn't break for lunch.
Yeah, and you can have almost unlimited amounts of them, right?
True.
We're stuck in this paradigm of like, okay, I have like a one-to-one with whatever chatbot I'm talking to, whatever tool I'm using. But the reality is that you might have 10, you might have 100, even get to a point where you might talk to one, but that delegates further down to multiple. Sorry for that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm juggling a few, and I do keep them kind of siloed. But then one thing I was discovering was if you get into it enough, you start becoming creative to build your own formula on how to use it. And because there's no manuals that come with these things, right? It's you figuring it out. It's me going and seeing what somebody else has done. But like I will use ChatGPT to write me a better prompt, and then it will say, what are you using? Midjourney, Firefly, what it is. And it knows how to even customize it for that particular platform. So they are helping me work together in building better stuff. And I didn't even know that was existed,
Yeah, and I think this is also something that's happening now with like a bit more time, under the belt. Like in the beginning, these systems weren't aware of each other, but now you have training data. I think most of like the big models, the cutoff date is like late last year or early this year. Okay. So a lot of them are now aware, like in the core training data, that all these other platforms exist and they're trained on each other's stuff, right? So now when you ask ChatGPT to write the Midjourney prompt, it has already trained on hundreds of thousands or even millions of Midjourney prompts. But that wasn't the case in the early days. Like if you wrote, can you write me a Midjourney, prompt, the AI would just spit out like, what are you talking about, basically. So I think that's the one thing now that I've had the biggest impact in terms of how I do daily work. But then apart from that, it's just that like putting things through an LLM in many senses, like And I think more of that maturity will happen over time, where we now also have internet access in many of these devices, and many of these models do search the internet. I mean, Grok has real-time access to X. We're just going to have a very different landscape, and that landscape is just changing right in front of us. So, like,
Yeah.
it's I would focus on the fundamentals, not so much on the individual technicalities of each tool or each platform or each thing. I would be like, stay curious, be willing to reskill or relearn, even if you just learned something that might not be true a month from now or 5 months from now, and just have that adaptability. It will settle down at some point. I'm pretty sure it will, even though that's hard to kind of foresee. But like, we will get to some sort of stabilized environment, either by AGI being invented and nothing matters, or simply because like we're kind of okay, we've now kind of got to the point where like we're plateauing a bit, and like it's time to kind of put things to action.
I wouldn't have predicted that, and I totally agree. I feel like that's something coming. It's going to get to that point,
Yes, at some point.
What? Yeah. Lastly, what have you seen on your radar lately that has just either blown your mind or is worthy of kind of chatting a little bit about? Because you've seen a lot of good stuff, and I think the reason I even immediately said I got to reach out to you was you said you had a tweet or something that said something about like what I have just seen is going to like change, and it was so like I can't remember specifically, and then I even asked, I was like, I got to remember what that was. But what is it? Like, what have you seen that you think has just been like,
yeah. So I think what you're referencing to here, something that really, really excites me a lot is this kind of like, maybe it's boring, but it's this notion of having this personal entity that kind of sticks with you, that sees all the things that you do, no matter where you do it, whether it's your email or your chats or your spoken. Like I have one of these devices.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's like an AI recording
What's it called?
device. This is the pendant from limitless.ai.
Okay.
But imagine like all of these data sources being sucked into a singular unit where you have a conversation, whether it's through voice, through chat, on your computer, on your phone, omnipresent, anywhere, and it just knows. It doesn't matter if you like start typing on your phone or if you start talking with your AirPods or whatever. It just knows everything about you, what you talked about the last time. And it's not a companion per se, but it's almost like a really, really talented executive assistant or member of the family. I don't know where this is going. This is a bit philosophical. It's a bit like, have you been taking mushrooms? No. And why I'm so excited about this is because the big companies are working on this. And the form factors and the ways that we're going to interact with this are still undecided upon. But from what I've seen, like, it's so far gone already that like these are not like fictional ideas. Like this is all possible. It's just a matter of like cost. How much does it really cost per user to run something like this? Do we have the hardware or the compute to kind of use much of this at the edge? So, for example, like, can we run 80% of the workload on device? We see Apple kind of doing, their take on AI is slow, but they're going the privacy route. So they're not winning, but they are making progress. And I think more on the hardware side, where their hardware is allowing them to do a lot of stuff on device. Google is amazing in this area. They're like just doing so much skunk works behind the scenes that it's like unimaginable to understand how much they're doing. But it kind of also makes sense because they're a juggernaut in the sense that they were the ones discovering LLMs in the first place. They were really hard at kind of turning around their big oil tanker. But now they have, and I think they have like a uniform kind of alignment within the company. But they're not alone. Like OpenAI is and like a new, comparable new player in the field, right? And they're doing their stuff. They acquired Johnny Ive and his team to build hardware. And this area really excites me because for me, it might be like an EA. For a student, it might be unlimited tutors in anything that you can imagine. For a teacher, it might be unlimited teacher assistants. For a doctor, it might be unlimited help with their workload. Because we're kind of stuck in this paradigm again, like one-to-one. It's like one to unlimited. Wow. It's like, that's the power here. Like, we are going to be the bottleneck. No matter how we think about this, our own capacity to kind of compute will be the biggest bottleneck in all of this. And also our ability to build enough compute to satisfy the compute needs for all of this to run. And I think that's why you see these enormous infrastructure investments going into just building compute. Because
it's going to need it.
The people that are playing 5D chess, they're already understanding where this is going. And that's why, they're making these bets on 5-10 years from now. And for that to be true, we need the compute. And you can't come in 5-10 years and say we need to build that compute out, because that's going to be too late.
Yeah. Wow. Damn,
so I think in that realm, that's one of the things that excites me the most. This just ability to have like all the brightness and smartness of the world basically in the palm of your hand, and not just what we got with Google, right? We had information at the palm of our hands.
Now it's customized.
Now we had this
perfectly.
kind of engineered intelligence that's just omnipresent, and that excites me a lot.
You made me even curious about like maybe looking into one of those, because like I do see a lot of those new wearables being shown up everywhere, and I know a few have flopped, but it's like it's still trying, and you explained it just well. The whole idea of one to infinite, it just seems like
I think there are many
that's a selling point.
I think there are many takes on the wearables. I think ultimately what it is a context vacuum. Mm-hmm. So in my case, I'm not really interacting that much with the device. The device is always with me, but it records everything more or less. And the company behind it, they're doing better and better by every month. But I think ultimately the context that's being sucked up with this will allow to build a more holistic picture of everything that I'm doing. It helps understand the relationship between me and my kids, me and my partner, me and my friends, and that is that context would go lost if it only had access to like my chat messages or my emails. Yeah. So I think ultimately we're gonna have ways to kind of ingest context to build a better graph on who we are as people. And some will say like, oh, that's very privacy invasive. And I mean, yes, that might be the case. But we will have to figure out ways to solve this, because you will figure, like, people that go hard on this and that really kind of just indulge all of this and go, oh, I'm just going to go all in. I think they're going to have an unfair advantage over people that goes, nope, I don't want anything to do with this. Stay away from me. I want to do things the old way. And I think they're going to end up like the people resisting cars and sticking around with horses.
Yeah, that's my favorite one too. No one asked for a car, but they got it.
Yeah, and they tried really hard for a long period of time to be like, don't buy a car because the carburetor needs uptake and like your horse only needs to eat. And I'm like, I mean, this is a far more complicated situation, but I think there's some truth to all this kind of history saying.
Amazing. Hey, other than your X feed, which I will put down in the notes, what's one amazing resource you would recommend someone to kind of tap into daily, weekly? That could be a really good.
I would say I not about me. Like, my newsletter is also good, but I don't write it that often anymore. Okay. But I'd say if you want to stay up to date, like in the creative field or in general.
Could be a little bit of both.
Could be both.
I'm finding like so many folks on YouTube that
there's some good YouTube channels. I would say like Matt Wolf is one.
Yes,
guy that's just like talking in front of the camera a lot. And then if you want a newsletter in your inbox, I would say like the rundown.ai. That's by Rowan Chung. He do a lot of interviews with some of the execs, and he's writing a lot. And there's a lot of people writing this newsletter for him, but it's very good. And if you're in Europe, I'd say Super Intelligence is a good European newsletter.
Perfect. Well, dude, that's been great, man. Thank you so much for making the time, first of all,
no
with our
worries.
big hour difference here. But we made it happen on a Friday. And I'm so appreciative of you coming on and just kind of giving your perspective, man.
No worries.
It's even for me, it's waking me up a little bit even more. And I hope it's done some for others as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It's been a
You
pleasure.
got it.
Thanks for watching the Deeply Graphic Design Cast. New episodes every week? Well, most weeks. Be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss the latest. Now shut this off and go design some damn magic.